have a banger intro.
Oh, no. The Chiefs did not escape Jacksonville unscathed. Should they make some changes to the wide receiver room? And should they make some changes to the defensive end room too? Let's talk about it.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. If you're thinking about starting a business or know someone who is, check out Emprise Bank's SBA loans. It's always good to know your options, and they can be your partner in possible.
Welcome into a live edition of the KC Laboratory presented by Emprise Bank, member FDIC, our partners in possible here at KC Sports Network. They are the bank for the KCS and Draft Guide and KC Sports Network. We are so appreciative of them. We are so appreciative of everyone listening to this show today. I'm Kent Swanson. I'm here with Matthew Lane. Matthew, how we doing?
I mean, listen, football started, so we're doing pretty good. You know, it maybe wasn't the prettiest game the Chiefs played, but football's here. We're rolling. Things are happening. It's a good time. We got to go back. All 22 for preseason, like you said, exists. So I've been able to just dive down into the all 22 of multiple different preseason games. It's a problem. It's an addiction. It's an issue. There's like an 800 number I think I have to call for this because nobody should be doing those kind of things on a Sunday night.
That is an out of context quote that needs to hit the Twitter space at some point here, Tucker. Thank you all so much for hanging out. I too have dove into the all 22 of Chiefs Jags, and it was riveting stuff. I'm sure we got a lot of things to talk about from that game. In fact, we do. We will start with this. Hollywood Brown, his injury, last we have heard from Andy Reid, does not require surgery, so that is good. Hopefully that speeds the timeline up a little bit in his return. Still a lot of questions and murkiness on when he is expected to return. The start of the season remains in question at this point, and obviously that presents some questions for the Chiefs' approach at the wide receiver position moving forward, Matthew.
Yeah, the big thing here is we don't know how long Hollywood Brown's going to be out for, right? And that kind of, I guess, changes a little bit of everything, right? If we're looking at something that they think's long-term, if the Chiefs have plans to put Hollywood Brown on the IR, which means he would be missing at minimum of 4 games, I think that kind of changes the outlook of what you're going for. Whereas if this truly is going to follow the Tyreek Hill timeline of essentially the same injury for the most part against the same team in the same stadium, if it's going to follow that didn't Tyreek Hill also get hurt on the first drive of that game, if I'm not mistaken, because it was Sammy Watkins from then on out?
I think you might be right. Didn't they run leak that game to Sammy?
They did, yes.
And big play. I don't know. I think he might have scored on that one, actually, now that I think about it.
I think there's a slant he scored on. The leak, I don't know if he scored on or not. But yeah, it depends on how long he's going to be out, right? If you're getting Hollywood Brown back in week 2, week 3, or whatever, then I don't know if you have to not necessarily make any changes, but nothing changes. You're just going to have the next man up. Yeah, there's some guys that are going to have to step up. Your Sky Moore, Xavier Worthy's, Kadarius Toney, whoever it is, someone's going to have to step up. But I think the issue gets a lot more compounded if you think that Hollywood Brown might miss more time. If this is an injury that might leak into a fourth of the season, a quarter of the season, you need to replace whatever that plan was that Hollywood Brown was going to have for this team, whether that's someone on the roster, whether you want to look outward. I think Hollywood Brown was set for a big role in this team is the moral of the story.
And is not a fair word right now because he's still going to have a big role this year, Matthew. We just don't know when.
This is true.
He's going to be back. We just don't know when. We don't know when he is going to be, back, and that's obviously disappointing. This team has endured a lot of injuries at just about every single position, and it remains to be seen who gets kept out week 1. But defensive end, defensive tackle, Chris Jones, that $30 million defensive tackle, he hasn't practiced in a while. You've had the injuries at linebacker, cornerback, safety, wide receiver, you name it, interior offensive line, tackle, Wanya Morris. A lot of little injuries popping up for this team so far, and we don't know for sure who all is going to wind up being out and when it's all said and done. But it is just they're piling up differently than they have in recent memory. Sky Moore seemed to get some opportunity here when he was called upon. I think early in that game, it seemed like he was getting a little bit of burn. Sounds like Sky Moore might got a little run with the first team today as well. So it's we've talked about, hey, maybe you can move on from one or two of these guys that are kind of competing at the bottom, for the remaining receiver spots. I don't know if you can do that now, and I think it also squeezes some things. You might have to keep 7 receivers now. Like, you're probably keeping 7 receivers if Hollywood, and you're probably keeping 7 regardless on the initial 53, even if you were, God forbid, having to IR Hollywood Brown and then bring him back after that. So I think 7's probably the number of receivers at this point too.
Yeah, and the IR rules are essentially like, the teams can place 2 guys on the injured reserve. They just have to, during the preseason, then they would miss at least the first 4 games. I'm not saying Hollywood Brown goes on the IR, but either way, he's going to count for your initial, I guess he doesn't have to count for your initial. I don't know. We'll see how it plays out. I think they keep 7 guys. It'll be a matter of replacing it. Now, I guess here's my question for you. Hollywood Brown was out there in one game. It was a short little amount, but I project his role to this to be a pretty substantial one. And a lot of it's going to be working with short to intermediate areas, being the guy that they can rely on to beat man coverage to go along with Travis Kelce. Let's say this is the, worst case scenario of this injury, and he's going to miss the first 4 games of the season. How do you think they compensate for losing a Hollywood Brown and their current iteration of this team?
Well, we can talk about one of those guys in a minute, but I don't know if there's a ton of great answers on the roster to try to like for like him. So do you go back to a little bit more of what you saw last year? How do you, who operates in the middle of the field a little bit more this time around? How does it work with a Rashee Rice? You don't really have that true man beater now. Like, you're hoping, I think Xavier Worthy can turn into that, but I don't know if you're really going to see him operating in the same spaces that you were hoping to put Hollywood Brown. And I don't think you want to in year one either. I think you give him an opportunity to kind of do what he's doing, working the vertical plane and working a little bit more outside. So I don't think they have a true like for like replacement for him. And from a personnel perspective, that's just there's really not a ton of great options, I don't think, right there. I don't know if you feel comfortable or confident in any of the guys that they might be able to roll out to quote unquote replace Hollywood.
Yeah. And I think that's the issue that you run into right away, right? You look at the rest of this roster. Worthy has the most upside of the guys, but I don't know if you're ready to put it. This is going to sound kind of funny. I don't know if Xavier Worthy is ready to go out there at his 170 pounds and beat man coverage and handle the physicality of press coverage. And it's just funny because we're talking about Hollywood Brown, another very slight wide receiver that struggles against physicality, but he has at least proven in the NFL that he is capable of doing it rep in and rep out while healthy for, 2 different teams now. So it's just seeing Worthy in year 1 step into that role seems a little lofty. That's directly what Rashee Rice struggled with the most last year. If you're looking at where he didn't excel, it was out wide against press coverage and beating man coverage. Justin Watson's not the same type of wide receiver. And now you're down into maybe Sky Moore, maybe Kadarius Toney, maybe one of these guys can hit. So yeah, if you lose Hollywood Brown for a while, they don't have a clear answer behind it. And that takes it back to, okay, we need to force teams to play zone so we can let our younger guys, our athletes, get into open space. And that is a lot of what they had to do last year. I just don't know if this offense can take that step forward in the evolution that we're all hoping for without that role out there. And I do think that Hollywood Brown is the guy that has that role.
I think that's a great way of framing it is, can you get defenses to play zone heavy against them? And I still think you might be able to, even with the pieces. I still think you can still get teams into that because you do have the threat of a Xavier Worthy out there. Yes, I know Rashee Rice struggled against man coverage, but just on principle, I do think teams are still want to play more zone against the Chiefs. Really, I think they want to default to that, and they might have enough excuses. They still saw plenty of zone last year, and they were still able to beat it up a little bit, and they're better equipped to beat it up this year too. By the way, just because they have Xavier Worthy on the field. The version of the offense we saw last year is not, this version of the offense is better. I do genuinely believe it will be better simply by adding Xavier Worthy to the mix of Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce. it might be, and Xavier Worthy's presence simply might be enough that teams try to play, hey, top down, we're going to limit the explosives. We're not going to let Xavier Worthy beat us, and we're going to have more space to operate in the middle of the field for Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce. Like, that could be enough to force teams to play more zone. And if that's the case, like, obviously you want Hollywood Brown because this is a terrifying, outlook of an offense if Hollywood Brown's in the mix. But I'm hopeful that Xavier Worthy is kind of enough to push teams to say, hey, look, let's play off and soft in between the 20s and tighten up in the red.
Yeah, and it's a lot of pressure for a rookie wide receiver, but I guess there's nothing wrong with making him at least prepare for that to start the year. And like we said at the top, Hollywood Brown, will come back sometime this season, probably earlier rather than later. If we were just to guess at this point, but it would just be a guess. Like, we don't know. It doesn't sound like an injury that should keep him out for over half of the season. So once he comes back, it will probably be good for Worthy to have had the reps, because so far it seems like Worthy's role has been relatively not limited, but it's been in a pretty narrow scope of you're going to run deep or you're going to get something real short that's manufactured, and which is fine. That's the way that you want to start using him. But now without Brown, that's opening up an entire role. Giving Worthy those reps is probably a good thing. But if it's not Worthy kind of replacing that, and we don't have a ton of confidence for anybody else in this roster to step in right away, like what did the Chiefs do? Like, how is there any moves out there the Chiefs could make to help this out, Kent?
I wonder, Matthew. Juju Smith-Schuster was recently released by the New England Patriots. It was a move that was expected after New England went ahead and drafted a couple young receivers, Javon Baker, Jalen Polk, in the 2024 NFL draft. At this point, it is not a injury decision by New England, but more culture / young player, wave of young talent than it is, injury. And that's not to say that he doesn't have an injury, but the decision at least has not been framed around the injuries that Juju Smith-Schuster has endured that has kept him from playing consistently over the last few years. He's now available. He's hit the open market. Especially considering Hollywood Brown's absence, do you think Juju Smith-Schuster makes sense to add to Kansas City's wide receiver room? Matthew Lane, what say you?
I don't. Even with Hollywood Brown, but probably missing sometime this season, hopefully not a lot. Juju and Hollywood Brown play different roles. Hollywood Brown's actually better for zone than man coverage. That's where Juju wants. Like, there's a little bit of overlap in what they do, but also there's so much more overlap with what Rashee Rice is good at and what Juju's good at. And if you're going to replace Hollywood Brown with Juju Smith-Schuster for just a couple games, I don't know it's going to be kind of hard, I think, for Travis Kelce, Rashee Rice, and Juju Smith-Schuster to all function on the field at the same time, unless Rashee Rice takes a significant step forward, winning from the outside, winning versus press against man coverage, which is possible. That's absolutely in the cards. We just really haven't seen it yet. We don't have the proof of the pudding there yet. So it would sound a little clustered. It sounds a little mugged up over the middle of the field and shallow to get those three guys out there together. And then you look long-term, when Hollywood Brown comes back, you're kind of keeping Juju Smith-Schuster around to be depth in case somebody else gets hurt. And with the fragileness of Hollywood Brown, potentially the fragileness of Xavier Worthy, just because of the size, not because of his injury history, it makes sense to have someone around there. But what's Juju Smith-Schuster doing on week 8? Is he playing special teams? Is he suiting up? Is he going out there? Is he running down the kickoff and making a tackle? Like, what is he doing in week 9 when the rest of the wide receiver 1 through 4 or 5 are healthy? What's his role on this team? So I get it for insurance purposes, but man, I don't know. I don't know if he even cracks the starting lineup even without Hollywood Brown.
I think that's fair to say. Like, I'm not sure he cracks the starting lineup, quote unquote, with the Hollywood Brown absence, because I do agree that there is a lot of crossover with him and a Rashee. Like, I think they get it done a little bit differently. I like Juju Smith-Schuster's chemistry with Patrick Mahomes. I feel like he was able to run and see things in the middle of the field a lot more consistently, the way that Mahomes, I think he developed more chemistry, I guess I could say, with Mahomes in that 1 year than I think even we saw with Rashee Rice. Not to say Rashee didn't develop some, but Rashee had to be a lot more manufactured, whereas I think Juju saw the field the same way Pat did, and that's why they hit the ground running and had a lot of success. Granted, it was in more short than intermediate. The thing I like about Juju, and in addition, is I don't think you have to ask him to play a major role. I think he is a not in breaking case of emergency, but I think he's a guy that lengthens the lineup a little bit to give you another player that has built that kind of chemistry with Patrick Mahomes, has had success in Kansas City, insulates you in case there is a Rashee Rice midseason suspension, gives you another option that has played the field. And you don't have to lean on him in such a major role that you run the risk of him getting hurt, as much as if you were having to throw him out and get that one healthy season that he's really had in Kansas City versus basically everything sandwiched in between. I like the idea of a reliable player that has had success here, that has been on the same page as Patrick Mahomes, really good with the option routes. He was consistent with reading coverage and making good decisions in coverage, and Mahomes trusting him enough to get him the ball. And just from that perspective, it just seems like there's a lot of value there, even though, it's not a direct Hollywood replacement, but it's a guy that has a lot of experience here in Kansas City, finding success and getting on the same page with the quarterback.
Yeah, I get the appeal. I get the familiarity with Mahomes, with the system a little bit, how he and Mahomes seemed to work on the same page. It was a really good year for Juju Smith-Schuster. It was like a perfect bridge while Travis Kelce was still like at his absolute best, but having to change his game to be less vertical than he was. But like having him and Juju working together, it worked out really well for that year. So I understand the appeal of maybe getting that back, and whether it's not all the time, it's not being wide receiver one for that team. It would be coming in when there was injuries in certain spots. I do get the appeal. I just, looking around at how the NFL is working with this new kickoff rule and everything like that, and then just looking at the rest of the Chiefs roster, it's this, I have a hard time seeing a veteran wide receiver, one, taking vet minimum, going to a team where he's going to be kind of buried on the depth chart. And then how are you handling the special teams aspects? We also got to look at it. There's other guys that can do it, obviously, but you look at the Chiefs kickoff rule, it's Xavier Worthy's not running down there making tackles. Hollywood Brown, when healthy's not running down there making tackles. Rashee Rice isn't running down there making tackles. Justin Watson, sure. McCole Hardman's not really running down there making tackles. Who are the guys? Justin Ross is the only other guy that you maybe put out there on special teams and say, hey, you'll go play out there and make a tackle. Juju Smith-Schuster isn't funneling into that spot either. So it seems kind of hard how you fit him on this team once Hollywood Brown's healthy. Now, maybe if Hollywood Brown's missing time and inactive for a couple weeks, maybe Juju Smith-Schuster goes on the practice squad because, and you call him up for the first few weeks. Maybe if Hollywood Brown has to go on the IR and he's going to miss 4 weeks, then maybe Juju Smith-Schuster comes in and then after that goes to the practice squad or whatever. There's probably ways you could work around it to only utilize him while Hollywood Brown's injured, but I have a really hard time seeing where he fits on this team without an injury to one of those top three guys, Worthy, Rice, and Hollywood Brown.
So do we think Sky Moore's playing some special teams?
Did we see him out there on special teams?
I think they were playing around with it a little bit late last year as he was getting some work in if they were going to, the reason I ask is this is not a very special teams friendly receiver room regardless. And that's what's been kind of interesting, I think, for me, because Kadarius Toney's not doing it. Nico, return game. Justin Ross, he can do it, but I don't know. I wouldn't consider him particularly good at it. Justin Watson, yes. Sky Moore, maybe. I don't know. From a roster construction perspective, I don't think you're getting a ton of value out of the receiver room as it is when it comes to 4 core special teams type player outside of some return game juice. So I'm just I get what you're saying, but if you're keeping 7, okay. If it's Juju or Sky or Justin Ross, 2 of the 3, you could, I don't know. I feel like you might be able to squeeze them in just because I don't think the bottom of this receiver room's really got a ton of special team types anyway.
So and I get what you're coming from. For me, it's if Nico makes the team as one of the wide receivers, he's a return man. Potentially, he's actually probably a return man, both as a punt or kick returner. McCole Hardman also gives you that same flexibility. So while they're not maybe running down there making tackles, although I think Nico might try a little bit, it seems like that's something that would be in his wheelhouse a little bit, maybe. But if not, you still at least have return value from both Hardman and Nico Remigio at the bottom of the roster. Justin Ross, Justin Watson, both played special teams for the Chiefs last year when they were healthy or in the past. They are willing to do it. They can put them out there. I surprised Ross does it given his, injury history, but he's played reps as a special teamer. He's been on the kick cover or the kick return team this past in the preseason game. So I think you can see special teams usage for other wide receivers at the bottom. I don't know where you put Juju at all. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Juju is willing to go out there and play that same role that Justin Ross is. Maybe that's something that's in his cards. I don't know. But if it's not, it's just he provides no value there. And his only value to the offense is when other guys get hurt. That's a hard roster spot for this team, I think, in this moment.
I don't think Juju would be here to play special teams, personally. My question here, Hollywood Brown has to be on the active roster.
Yeah.
Even if he does get IR'd. And I don't think he's going to get IR'd. Give me your 7 wide receivers right now after one preseason game. I don't know when we're predicting 53, but give me your 7 wide receivers right now. We're assuming they're keeping 7.
Hollywood Brown, Xavier Worthy, Rashee Rice, Justin Watson, McCole Hardman. We're sitting at 5. Am I forgetting anyone obvious? No. Okay, Nico Remigio, Justin Ross.
Okay, so Sky and KT are both out.
Yeah, if I have it my way.
I'm asking you to predict, not what Maddie wants.
If I have it my way. I mean, like, I don't mean to be rude about this, but Kadarius Toney can't even practice right now. Like, I mean, I guess did he come back today? He might have suited back up for the 10-10-10 today, but like, we're going through another offseason where Kadarius Toney can barely play. They've tried fiddling around with him as a running back and a wide receiver. Like, if he can't get healthy by the time the season starts, that seems like, I don't know if we can go, just how many times can you go down that road? Sky Moore is a harder one to keep off from a prediction standpoint, because when Hollywood Brown got hurt, he was the first guy that kind of got to slide into those reps. Now, granted, the starters only played one more series after that, right? But Sky Moore was getting those reps. And then when you look at today's practice, who was taking a lot of the Hollywood Brown reps? It was going to be Sky Moore. So maybe he's a little bit higher up in the building than I think we as fans on the outside think. But right now, I'm not buying the hype. I'm not going to take the dip for that chip yet. I'm going to sit back. I've had Sky Moore firmly off my prediction for this team's 53-man roster for a while now. I'm not letting a Hollywood Brown injury and the first preseason game change that for me at this point.
Sky's the one. KT, whatever. Like, I'm not even trying to argue Kadarius. Nothing surprises me. I don't think he's, I'm paying a little attention to Sky in the pecking order. Sky was off the field early with the starters. He was off pretty early in that game. He's been getting a lot of run with the first team as it is. He gets more run today. That one seems more interesting to me from I wouldn't be stunned if if his spot in the roster is more secure than McColl's. I think McColl's making it too. I think there's 6 for sure. And it's if they keep 7 and which one that 7 is. And yeah, I don't know how much special teams is going to play a factor in all that.
Okay, I'm digging through. Oh, no, sorry. I was digging through the special teams snap counts while you were talking from the preseason game. No wide receivers actually played on the kick return team besides his returners, besides, I believe, Montrell Washington. It looks like Montrell Washington played snaps not as a returner.
Wow.
I don't think he's making the team. On the kick coverage unit, I didn't see, the only wide receiver I think I saw there was, again, Montrell Washington played on kick coverage. And that looks to be it. Phillip Brooks doesn't look like they have any wide receivers that are making this team that are playing on a kick coverage. So maybe we're sitting here spending all this time talking about the wide receivers and special teams contributions. Maybe if you're not a returner, maybe it just doesn't matter to this team the way it is right now. Simply might not. That's
kind of what I was wondering, man. And if that's the case, I think that opens the door for a Juju, because I don't think they got a lot of value out of the receiver room last year on special teams. When you think about it, they really didn't have a ton of guys doing it last year. So, I
lied. Justin Ross played 3 snaps on kick coverage. He was heading in there. So Justin Ross still doing the kick coverage work.
Yeah, and I don't know if he's a value add as much as he's available. Honestly, I kind of wonder if he's really all that valuable. Okay, now we are going to take a break, and we are going to talk about whether or not the Chiefs should try to trade for Matthew Judon right after this.
We appreciate you supporting KC Sports Network by listening to our podcast. You have helped us become the highest ranked Chiefs podcast network in 2022 and 2023. And don't forget about our daily Substack newsletter, the best written analysis you can find on the Chiefs straight to your inbox every day. kcsn.substack.com.
I would like you all to know that time is running out for your chance to sign up for the KCSN Golf Tournament. It is here in a month. Make sure you are signing up. We are filling up very quickly, so I know some people are still trying to get their teams together. I'd hurry up and do that. Tacos and bourbon out at Sunflower Hills Golf Course on Saturday, September 7th. It is going to be an incredible time. It is some of the coolest prizes we've ever given out, including a barrel pick from KC Sports Network of bourbon. So we all got to do that together as a group. We picked a barrel together. It was a lot of fun. And you all get to taste our hard work because we did all the work on that, of course. Definitely not the barrels aging it for 7 years. Yes, I said 7. We have good taste. We picked a 7-year. So anyways, sign up for that. Also, the Mint Mobile hotline is still running 913-407-6524. Again, 913-407-6524. If you want to talk to Tucker D. Franklin, if you're lonely, if you want lunch recommendations, if you want FCS teams to follow, whatever. If you text the text line during the show, you might wind up getting on. Tucker will be manning that. Again, 913-407-6524. So got some news today from Jeremy Fowler of ESPN. Multiple teams have inquired about trading for pass rusher Matthew Judon amidst his contract stalemate with the New England Patriots. Per sources, Matthew Judon is due $6.5 million in the final year of his deal. New England made a contract offer to Judon this summer, which Judon did not accept. This is a 31-year-old pass rusher who's had a lot of productivity in his career. This is a player that probably fits the profile of a Steve Spagnuolo defensive end more than Hassan Reddick does, who is asking for a trade now. But Matthew, I guess my question, do you think the Chiefs are one of the teams that have inquired about trading for him? Yes or no?
Yes. Why not? I mean, if you're the Chiefs, we know that they were interested in Emmanuel Ogbah. Why not? If there is belief around the league that Matthew Judon is potentially available for trade, why, if you were the Chiefs, would you not pick up the phone and just be like, hey, that Judon character, what's it looking like? What's the worst case scenario? They tell you that they want a first round pick and you say, no, thank you, right? Like there's nothing that would stop a team like the Chiefs, who we at least know has on some level has had interest in bringing in another defensive end in Emmanuel Ogbah, that they wouldn't at least be a team that we can hypothesize picked up the phone and called and asked about Matt Judon. Now, does that mean they did? No. But if I just had to guess, I just don't see why a team in their position would not do that. They've also worked with the Patriots a lot. I understand it's different GM, different head coach now, but the Chiefs and the Patriots have made trades throughout Andy Reid's tenure with the Chiefs. So like there is some relationship somewhere there that has at least gone well enough to make deals in the past. So yeah, I think there's a chance that they looked. And yes, Matthew Judon does very much fit the Steve Spagnuolo's size thresholds, arm length, and everything like that. He is a very Spagsy type defensive end. So, hey, why not? Let's just lock it in. The Chiefs definitely called, right?
I think they did. When you're looking at places to improve the roster, the lack of depth at defensive end right now is not great. It's pretty thin. This is a team that has more cap space heading into the season than they've had in the last few years. They've got $17 million in cap space to work with. Obviously, they'll be able to roll over some of that if they don't use it. But I feel like this team has more wiggle room than they've had in the last few years to go out and make a move at to find impact players. When I look at, and I think we talked about this in the post-game show, when I look at just opportunities here, I think there might be some more depth at the cornerback street free agent market to, add someone that can contribute. I don't think there's a ton of defensive ends that can really help your football team right now sitting out there. That's just the nature of the beast anyway. But it's a very premium position as it is. This is the kind of opportunity. I think that if you've got an extra third round pick from the L'Jarius Sneed trade, you have extra cap space than you've historically had over the last few years. This is the kind of player you're in on. I don't know what it would take to get him. It might take a 3rd round pick. It might take that 3rd round pick. I'd try to keep the Titans one so we can root for the Titans to stink all year. It might take your 3rd round pick though to get a Matthew Judon. But this is a guy that could make a significant impact on this team. I think this is an impact player. This is a player that can really help you win football games. That could potentially come available. You're probably not extending him. That's not the MO of the Chiefs right now. So if there's no teams willing to trade for him and then give him a new contract, then I think the Chiefs are in great position to try to get him because they should have the cap space. They should have some draft capital to try to do it. So I think this is exactly the kind of player the Chiefs should be in on to try to make their football team better.
I mean, he's due, I think, $6.5 million this year. So, and I don't know how that's split up between if you're just acquiring them, is that all on you if you're the Chiefs, or some of that split between the Patriots and whoever they trade him with, but they still have the space. I mean, they definitely have the space for that. Or I don't know what the contract negotiations went like. If the Chiefs did want to see about adding an extra year onto that or 2 or whatever to get a little bit of money, if that's what it took to push it through, I don't think he's 31 years old. He's coming off of an injury. So I understand there's hesitations. And like to Kent's point, I don't think the Chiefs are necessarily wanting to trade and extend long-term a Matthew Judon. But if it was to get 1 more year besides this one out of it, I could see a pathway to where that comes down the pipeline and works. I mean, here's a guy 2 years ago had 17 sacks and was like in the running for defensive player of the year in 2022, playing with the New England Patriots defense, gets hurt last year. Now he wants more money. It does not seem like he's getting it. And while he's holding in, I don't think holding out, holding in, it does sound like at least the talks around the NFL, because teams are calling that they might think that he's available. So yeah, this is a guy that immediately comes in and is your best defensive end on this team. Like, I like George Karlaftis. George Karlaftis is a good football player. Matthew Judon, when we've seen him last play football healthy, was a better player than George Karlaftis still is. And not that won't change in the near future, but like he immediately comes in as your defensive end one. And if he is willing to play for a new team to a chance to win a Super Bowl in Kansas City, or if it happens to require that, like I said, maybe 1 extra year thrown on there with some more money, whatever that may cost be. But if he's willing to play on this team for this amount of money, like you get substantially better with Matthew Judon now in the rotation. You get another 3-down defensive end, a guy that can play the run and the pass and do everything for you. You just bolster arguably your biggest weakness or one of your 2 biggest weaknesses on the team with this move. And given his age and being an expiring contract and the negotiations falling flat, I don't imagine the asking price can be through the roof. So this just seems like one of those moves that by the trade deadline, I think a contending team is going to acquire Matthew Judon. And hey, it might as well be the Chiefs. And if it's me in charge, like why not try it at the beginning of the year? Why not wait till later on in the year when I assume the asking price can only get higher because more teams will be in the sweepstakes then?
I think I think it's interesting that this news came out that teams have started to inquire. I think that's all deliberate and intentional. I think there's a chance he gets dealt before the start of the season. I think that's where the timeline's heading. The hold in tells me, I believe that he is going to, he has a chance to get dealt before the year starts. It's just a matter of like, there's always some layers here, right? Hassan Reddick just got traded and is demanding a new deal and is fighting with the Jets who traded for him 5 months ago and is demanding to get traded again. So who knows if Matthew Judon's going to try to, pull a Hassan Reddick and try to make this happen again and just try to, I think just because it's so tight to the season, it's going to be difficult for him to have that leverage the way Hassan Reddick has. But I think I would love this move if the Chiefs were to go out and get this guy, because he's DN1 and I don't know about the long-term ramifications in giving him a new deal necessarily. Like we'll see.
Sure.
But golly, man,
let's play a game. Okay. Let's play a game. What are the Chiefs' likelihood to win the Super Bowl or if a perfect 10 is the Chiefs are guaranteed to win the Super Bowl this year, going into the season right now, what do you think the Chiefs are on a 1 to 10 scale to win the Super Bowl? If a 10 is a guaranteed Super Bowl win.
15. Sorry.
I knew it was coming. So
yeah. What's a 7 get me? An 8. I feel good about their chances. I think this is going to be I think they're going to have a really good year.
Let's call it an 8 right now, right? If they trade for Matthew Judon, what is that? Is that 8 move? Does it become an 8.5? Does it become does that 8 move for trading for Matthew Judon?
Yes.
Yeah, right? I mean, I'm with you. I think it has to. You get You get a guy that's better than George Karlaftis. You get a guy that's probably better than a healthy Charles Omenihu, even when he was healthy. And then now that's your rotation heading in. There's now no rush for Omenihu to come back. He can just be back for the playoff push. You have 3 defensive ends that all have George Karlaftis' body type is different than those 2 guys, but they all play a similar style of football that they can just rotate in, slide into the interior, run off the edge. You also have Mike Dana doing those things. And now this is the thing. You're replacing a lot of Felix and Udike Uzama snaps with a Matthew Judon, or I mean, technically Mike Dana takes them, but like you are losing his snaps for Judon, but like you're better at all those snaps now. And now there's no pressure on Felix to come in and have to play a role again. It's like last year where there was no pressure to play a role. Now, early in the season, while Judon works into a new system, while you still don't have Charles Omenihu, you have plenty of time to get him reps. You can still get him work to show development that you're looking for, but you immediately make this team not only their starters better, but their rotation better. I'm with you. I think a trade for a guy like Judon actually does move the needle. It's not often there's guys available at this point that I do think you can say that about, but like if you're going to be at an 8 confidence level, they win the Super Bowl, I think that move puts you at least 8.5.
Whatever it is, it's an improvement. And I think looking from a risk mitigation perspective, I think one of the biggest areas that this team can't afford something bad to happen is defensive end, because if something, God forbid, happens to a Dana or a Karlaftis, this team is in a really rough spot with their defensive end position, even more than they already are. So you can sustain an injury and still be back where you were, or even a little bit better off still if you sign him, if you are able to trade a Matthew Judon and you're losing a Karlaftis or a Dana, God forbid. You're still, there's no drop off now because you still got a Judon to fall back on. Whereas right now, like this is where this team sits. So I think if he becomes available, it is a tailor-made situation for this team. I think like this is the most tailor-made opportunity. And there always is little things like this that pop up during this time of year. There is always veterans that pop up that are available, some to varying levels of ability, talent, impact. $6.5 million. The Chiefs have the cap space to handle it. They have the draft capital to give something to New England. Oh, by the way, the Patriots don't have to try to trade with the Bills, because like the market might shrink a little bit because it's the AFC East and there's a couple contenders that could be looking for some pass rush help there too. Maybe Judon maybe the Jets want Judon too. So I don't know. It makes sense to me. I would love to see this team jump on it if their opportunity really does present itself. Anything else on Matthew Judon? Matthew?
I mean, we've seen the Chiefs do this before, right? I mean, Terrell Suggs, the first run, right? It happened. Now,
free agent.
Terrell Suggs, free agent. Melvin Ingram. Melvin Ingram's a free agent, or did they trade a late pick for him, or a future late pick for him? I don't remember, but they've done it recently. I'm just going to say, like, Terrell Suggs is closer to the Matt Judon situation because he was still playing at a pretty competent level at least the year before. Like in Arizona, he wasn't that good, but the 2 years prior in Baltimore, he was still a pretty good player. 11 sacks, 7 sacks. He's still a quality run defender. Ingram had fallen off a little bit more, but like we've seen the Chiefs do this. When they see that there's a weakness at their defensive end room, we've seen them make midseason moves for guys. I don't know if this defensive end room is quite as dire as it was in the Terrell Suggs year. The Melvin Ingram one, I think it might have been about the same. I don't know if it was quite as dire, but I also don't know if you're getting a player that's as close to his prime as Matt Judon is right now still at this moment. So yeah, I think it was in there. I think we saw somebody ask, like, what would you trading for Judon? What are you willing to pay him? I mean, if he's willing to just come in and play, if you don't have to pay him any more money, if you don't have to restructure his contract, I'm fine with that 3rd round pick for Matt Judon to try to get a Super Bowl win this year at $6.5 million. If you are signing him something like, to go another year, like I'm not paying him top 5 defensive end money going into next year or anything like that. But if it's just one extra year thrown on there and you have to pay him top 10, 15 defensive edge rusher money for just one season and then you're out of it again, I don't know. I'd consider it still.
Titans pick or Chiefs pick? Doesn't matter. Would you give either of them?
I'd start with the Chiefs pick. And if it becomes a matter of this gets it done or it doesn't, if this is the Minka Fitzpatrick or the Jalen Ramsey thing where the Chiefs pick's just too late and nobody wants to take that because they're going to get better offers, a better 3rd round offer, then go with the Titans pick.
It's the best position they've been in to make this move. And allow. And this is the right kind of player to do it. So if Matthew Judon comes available, they should absolutely do it. Carson Steele is making a name for himself out there, Matthew. And we saw him play a little bit here this last week against the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's continuing to get positive reviews from Andy Reid, talking about his ability. And then also just saying, hey, look, the special teams piece of it's going to be a big factor from him. Still getting good vibes. Carson Steele was getting some run with the ones today at training camp. So like the vibes for Carson Steele are continuing to be strong.
Yeah. Hey, so I went back and watched his runs. Obviously, he put out good film out there. We all saw it. Here's the thing that really stood out to me, though. The run blocking for him was horrendous. The run blocking on Carson Steele's run plays was terrible. Guys were missing blocks left and right, and it didn't stop him from ripping off the big long run on the inside zone that like immediately had a guy hit him in the backfield and had another guy that was completely unmarked down the field after he bounced off, and he picked up a first down on a trap run that essentially his trap player didn't block anybody and he was still able to get in there. And then it's just the blocking wasn't good for Carson Steele, but he made the absolute most out of all of his opportunities. It's a little bit harder to find the reps of him blocking. I still want to see a little bit more as a blocker or receiver before I make too much there. But just from a rushing perspective, he seemed to have a good idea of where he was supposed to be going, where his eyes needed to be. The game wasn't working too fast for him. And when things broke down, he still made he made a huge play out of one of them. And the other plays, he still got everything that was there. He puts his head down. He goes and picks up a first down. He puts his head down and runs through his own pulling offensive lineman and gets in the end zone on the fourth down. Like, he seemed to have a good idea of when he can try to make a play happen and when he just needs to get the yards that are available. So I was very impressed. Oh, you're so muted. It's amazing. Oh, maybe your mic's just broke.
No.
Mike.
We done?
Yeah, we're done. We're good.
Who muted me? Was it you or was it Tucker, Matt?
I didn't do anything.
Oh, he hasn't done it in a year, but like
not the first time. The first time it wasn't me.
Pre-show, Maddie would like kick me out of the stream or mute me. Like, we went through a year where we would just randomly mute each other or kick each other out or remove each other from the chat and all that stuff. Thank you for doing that on air. I appreciate that.
Second one only.
I think you're right about that. I think I did the first. I think I did the first one. What was I going to talk about with Carson Steele? Because I died, came back to life. They played the horns, and I came back. I think. Look, we talked about Carson Steele, I think, in the summer, and I kind of just said there's players that have had good tape that can do the dirty work, pass protection, have shown good ability as a runner, that have fallen in the draft or fallen out of the draft. Kyron Williams, a guy that has kind of become a budding star in Los Angeles, is a guy that ran extremely slow, didn't test with measurables that you'd like from a size perspective, but has proven to be an excellent pass protector, a very good running back in the bell cow of the Los Angeles Rams. I'm not calling Carson Steele a bell cow, but what I am saying is I think the makeup of the player is something that is hard to deny, and he doesn't have the top gear to run away from players. But I saw someone call him Cream Hunt this week, and I think that's perfect. Like, there's the physicality, the power, the size, the density, contact balance. Maybe doesn't have the top gear to run away from each other, and he's slower. I mean, he's slower than Cream Hunt is even, but there's a lot to like about this kid, and I wouldn't want to move on from him. I'd want to try to find a way to get him involved. Andy's citing, hey, look, special teams is the path. He's got to be able to show something out on special teams. So that's definitely something I'm going to be paying attention to over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. He played some reps in special teams. It wasn't a ton. It's hard to get a read on like the first game. So we'll kind of see how the next few games go. I agree. Special teams is going to matter. Like, you're not going to be a fullback on an Andy Reid team and not have to play special teams. But I also think he's kind of sending people, on a little run around there, making them chase their tails. I think there's a very good chance that Carson Steele can be like just barely okay on special teams and make the team because of what he provides as a running back. I I think I've seen enough between him at Ball State, UCLA, and then now and it's one preseason game. Maybe things, fall off and all of a sudden he starts running into every blocker like Niall Davis and the next 2 games or something like that. But if that doesn't happen, if he continues to play like he has shown that he can, I think there's definitely an avenue that he can make this team just based purely on his ability as a runner, as a receiver, because he has shown the ability to catch a football out of the backfield when need be as well. So I feel pretty good. And going back and watching him and how the runs went down, it felt even more promising. Because like I said, the run blocking was really bad on the plays, but you could see his eyes were in the right spot. He was making the right reads and then just had a generally good feel for, on this play, I can bounce it outside because it's 1st and 10. What's the worst that happens? I get no gain or lose 1 yard. That's a risk I'm willing to take in this situation. On this 2nd and 3 play, I'm going to go ahead and get the 3 yards to get a first down. This isn't a play where it's allowing me just to be creative and potentially lose yards because that puts us in a bad situation. So he just seemed to have a good understanding and a good feel for the game on limited reps, but it was really impressive to watch. I would like to see him get some blocking opportunities. We didn't really get much in this game. Maybe, fling a football out to him, see him how to catch the ball on the move. Like there's still stuff to see that might not show up in the preseason that they're just watching at practice. But like, if I were to make a 53-man projection on him right now, like he's pretty starkly on there. He's on there and he's not 53.
So I guess my question for you is, who do you think played better, Deneric Prince or Carson Steele? Matthew, you're muted.
Yeah, but this one, the host has muted me, so it doesn't work when it drops me a warning. It lets me know when somebody's trying to play games. I think Carson Steele played better, but Deneric Prince still provides something that nobody else does. And I don't think the game looked too fast for him this year like it did last year, right? He didn't get a lot of opportunities. Again, blocking was bad for him as well. And like he didn't make quite as much out of it as Carson Steele did, obviously, but the game didn't look too fast for him. He seemed to understand what he was doing. I'm not willing to put Carson Steele over him yet because he does provide something a little different.
I think with Prince, a little snafu on special teams, there just seemed to be some and so like, I get what you're saying, but like a little lack of awareness there. I don't know. McCole had it. I mean, McCole was kind of, he kind of understood, at least, I think, had a decent idea what was going on, but Deneric just, saw it go in the end zone. Maybe it's just habit because he's been doing it his whole life, but I don't know. Just putting in the back of my head there, just putting in the back.
I do think he needs to show something, right? And like maybe he's showing a lot in practice and stuff, right? But I do think that it'd be a lot easier for us on the outside to feel good about saying, no, Prince is definitely running back 2/3. However, the Clyde stuff shaking out, which I don't have a very good read there either. But it'd make it a lot easier if Prince could show us something that we could really latch onto from the preseason that we get to see. Like the one run he had on the 3rd and long, like he looked fast. He looked like he had a different level of acceleration that anybody, that even Pacheco has, just because it would have a smoothness at which he gets there. So he looked like there's a physical skill set that other guys don't have at the position for the Chiefs. But when that was like a 3rd and 25 run for 10 yards, that doesn't really get the engine going so much when you pick up 10 yards on 3rd and 25. So I do think that we need to see something for him to feel a lot better.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire did not practice today. That is per Tucker D. Franklin. So something to pay attention there too. I mean, they honestly, we sure Clyde gets picked up. Like, is he a practice squad guy? Like,
I don't know.
There wasn't much of a market for him.
I think, I don't know. I honestly don't know. I really don't know. I feel like there's probably a team out there I don't know. Running backs are all over the place. And I don't know if Clyde separated himself enough as like a pass protector, 3rd down guy, or like energy guy, that there is definitely a team knocking down the door for him.
That's all. I mean, things you consider. You got, I mean, I think it's a game at the end of the roster trying to figure out who you think you're getting back and who you're not. Because, if there's some IR situations, they might have to find ways to keep some of these guys and get creative with that. Okay, last thing before we get out of here. So we watched the offensive line, and namely the depth on that offensive line. We watched the second team offensive line. A lot of young guys. I think at times there were 3 rookies on the offensive line for that team. What were your takeaways, Matt?
Let's go down the list. Keesley Suamatea is the starting left tackle for this team come week 1. I don't think there's any doubt about it. I don't know if you could see anything from this first game that should have said, he showed you good or bad because they protected him very well. They protected him very well with the play calls and the help that was in there and just the structure of the plays. Now, he got all the reps. He came out the starters. He didn't look bad by any stretch of the imagination. It was just a very protected situation for him, which is probably the smart thing to do with him in that spot. The rest of the starting offensive line, fine. Judon Taylor got pushed back into Mahomes' lap once by Trevon Walker, who's very strong. I don't think it's a worrisome thing. He didn't get beat, just got pushed back and let the pocket get squished a little bit. The issue comes after the starting 4 that we saw at 4.5. I think Mike Caliendo was okay. I like him. I like Caliendo a little bit better at guard, I think, than center. I think they get to use his movement ability better at guard. They get to free him up. They get to get him out on the move. But I thought he was fine. I thought he did a pretty good job overall. Everybody else, though, wow, real bad. I mean, just really bad. You would come to expect it from Hunter Norzad or CJ Hansen. Like, these guys are rookies. These guys are going to be trying. Yeah, these guys are rookies. They're trying to get Lucas Niang's practically played like rookie level of reps for the most. I mean, like, he hasn't played a lot, right? So you kind of Chu Godric. You expect these guys to have growing pains, but it was bad. Guys were missing blocks left and right. CJ Hansen on his own. I try not to be overly negative on one guy because I try to say it was kind of everyone. He missed about 5 blocks when he was asked to pull that kind of blew up runs. And like, they just became a problem because he was unable to pull across the formation and block a guy in the hole or kick out a guy that he was supposed to be trap blocking on the end. And that wasn't a good look. Hunter Norzad, I think, looked better at center than guard. So he's the opposite of Caliendo, but he was also playing center later in the game. So was it just the level of competition he was going up against that made him look better? Because like right off the bat, he was kind of getting steamrolled a little bit in pass pro at left guard. So I don't know. I got real worried about this offensive line's depth. I think realistically to expect him to be deeper than 6 guys with Caliendo being the 6 is unrealistic, but you would have, I think, liked to see a little bit more out of one of those other tackles. Wanya Morris didn't play, worth noting, but you would have liked to see a little bit more out of Godric. You would have liked to see a little bit more out of Niang, just somebody to make you feel kind of confident that if there's an injury, they have someone that can step in. Because from the guys we saw after the starting 5, I don't know. That was pretty bad. That was pretty bad play.
I was kind of surprised to put Carson Wentz behind it because it was very rough, and that group was getting welcomed to the NFL left and right, left to right, really, if you think about it. Norzad, I thought, got better as the game went on, and it wasn't just the center. It was even the guard reps, too. Like, I think there was a couple early welcome to the NFL moments, right, where he was just getting walked back into the quarterback, and he was just struggling to play with the power. He kind of figured things out a little bit more as the game went on, and so, like, I thought he looked a little bit better. Hansen, great athlete, but it wasn't just pulling. I think, just playing kind of stationary and getting beat with good hand tech, pretty consistently. Like, he was really struggling with a variety of different looks. This is, and honestly, I'll say of all the tackles, I actually think the one that flashed the most, and I'm not saying was good, I'm just saying the one that flashed the most to me, I think Ethan Driscoll flashed a couple of times, maybe just because of the size, but I don't think, that depth of tackle just did not look good. Just did not look good. There's a lot of young guys that they're getting their first reps, getting their first looks in the NFL. Weirdly, I'm kind of excited to see what it looks like from week 1 to week 2. Like, this is one group that, like, I'm very fascinated to see if any of these guys are able to take this next week and really do something with it and kind of put something together here. Because like, they need that. To your point, Matthew, they need somebody to step up. They need someone to take a step and really, kind of find their way into that rotation and be that 7th offensive lineman on this team.
Yeah, I mean, they need a 7-8, and it's especially.
And we should acknowledge Wanya Morris still on the roster. So it's probably tackle. It's O lineman 8. You want to know.
Right. Well, that's where I want to go. It's like the tackle one is the one. Like, yeah, I think Ethan Driscoll probably was the most impressive based on your expectations. Lucas Niang was probably just like blanket better than him, just because Lucas Niang is good as a run blocker. Like, he's a good run blocker, and he always has been. So, like, he's got that part done. I do think, like, I would feel comfortable on run plays if Lucas Niang had to come in and run the ball behind him or put him in there. He's fine. He's good in those situations. It's the pass pro that worries me, and, like, the expectations should be higher for Lucas Niang than they were for any of these other tackles. But, like, I don't feel good about any of them. So, yeah, and we talked about it last week going into the game, like, what matters for a preseason game. It's not necessarily the result. So these guys struggling in that first game against the Jags isn't the end-all be-all. It's not that big of a deal. you want to see growth in the next game. So the next game the Chiefs play, you want to see CJ Hansen not look like he's an FCS player coming into play in the NFL, as Tucker puts it very clearly for us. And you don't want to look Hunter Norzad not look like he's a rookie dealing with first and second string off defensive linemen from the Jacksonville Jaguars, who had a very good defense last year in the NFL. You just want these guys to show growth from game to game rather than coming out and expecting them to already be Nick Allegretti level players or, to be competent NFL backup players in their very first actions. Unrealistic. But if you can get that growth as it goes on, that's great. It's on the back of my mind now, though, that if this team suffers some injuries, this offensive line, especially on the interior, across the whole board, I don't even have to specify interior or tackle. This offensive line, if it suffers more than 1 or 2 injuries out there, like it could get ugly pretty quick because they have a lot of youth and a lot of guys that in the little bit that we've seen right now don't look ready to step in and not be a problem if they are asked to play significant snaps.
It's a fascinating roster on paper where there is a lot of young guys that I think they want to develop and they want to keep some of these guys around so they can, build the depth of this roster for the future of this team. And hopefully some of these guys are able to take a step or in that opportunity and be part of the Chiefs' plans for 2025. They need a win on the offensive line with this rookie class, and hopefully they're going to get one of them with the likes of a Norzad, a CJ Hansen, even an Ethan Driscoll would be a win. So hopefully they're able to get one of those. That is going to do it for this episode of the KC Laboratory. Thank you all so much for listening, watching, supporting KC Sports Network. We love you. We appreciate you. We'll catch you later.
You're muted again, Kent.